There was a time when Airbnb was considered a revolution in the tourism industry. Cheaper than a hotel, closer, more authentic, a place where you don't just stay, but also feel welcome. But then, something changed. Today, more and more Americans and foreign visitors are saying the same thing. I will never stay at an Airbnb again. The backlash is strong, and Airbnb stock is experiencing its steepest decline since its debut. Those who once loved Airbnb now say they feel no safer, not respected, and no longer considered a guest. Prices skyrocketed. Hidden fees appear. Hidden camera. House rules are only revealed after booking. And the feeling is hard to describe. Being used, not served. At the same time, a hotel that was once considered outdated is quietly making a comeback, stronger than ever. So, what caused trust in Airbnb to collapse so quickly? Is this just a business cycle, or a sign that the shared economy model has gone too far? In this video, we'll analyze the painful decline of Airbnb and why millions of Americans are saying goodbye, perhaps forever. Rewinding to 2008, amidst the belt-tightening across America after the crisis, 3 San Francisco guys couldn't afford rent, so they inflated a few air mattresses in the living room for strangers to sleep on. And then, it was that very roughness that created something that industrial hotels find difficult to sell, a feeling of being welcomed, not as a customer, but as a friend visiting a home. Airbnb was born from that moment, sounding like a joke, but creating an empire that everyone admires. In its early days, Airbnb was like a secret backdoor to the tourism industry. You open the door to a local's apartment and step into a different life, as if travel is no longer about booking a room, but about borrowing a slice of life. And most importantly, it's about 40–60% cheaper than a hotel, almost a no-brainer. And from a business perspective, this is the crucial winning point. Airbnb didn't win because of divine technology, but because it addressed the right pain point. Americans after the crisis were both tired and in need of a cheap, flexible, barrier-free option. The numbers are what most clearly reflect Airbnb's success at that time. Just 2 years after its launch, Airbnb surpassed 1 million bookings, equivalent to filling over 2,700 mid-sized hotels in a year, an easily visualized image, as if you suddenly erected an entire city of hotels just from people's living rooms. By 2012, the number jumped to 12 million views, a speed that made the big players take notice. So, what will happen? If Airbnb had kept its original promise of being cheap, simple, and friendly, do you think it would be boycotted like it is now? Feel free to leave a comment below. In a few minutes, we will delve deeper into each layer of the causes. If you like this kind of investigative analysis, peeling back the layers, subscribe to the channel so I have the motivation to delve deeper, because the next part is where the dark pieces appear. When the dream starts to derail, prices increase, fees mushroom, and customers realize they are no longer customers. There was a moment that Airbnb didn't announce with a press release, but the market felt it very clearly. That's when Airbnb stopped being a place to stay and started becoming an investment strategy. The spare rooms, where the homeowners once lived and brewed coffee for guests, are gradually disappearing. Instead, there are properties purchased solely for short-term rental, vacant, locked, with keypads, and operated like an assembly line. Within a few years, the number of Airbnb listings in many US cities increased by 70–80%, a rate comparable to dozens of mini hotels popping up in the same neighborhood, but without signs, reception desks, or service standards. Quiet residential areas began to resemble unlicensed resorts. People came and went constantly, but no one truly belonged there. And here, a disturbing truth emerges. When the host no longer lives in the house itself, hospitality disappears along with them. Airbnb still calls it sharing, but in reality, it has become speculation wrapped in palatable language, and when profit entered the room, the feeling of being welcome quietly left through the back door. But this is just the beginning. If in the early days when Airbnb first appeared, it was thanks to being cheap and pleasant, then in this chapter, things have reversed. Airbnb prices have quietly escalated without us realizing it, like water heating up. By the time we noticed, it was too late. Service fee, cleaning fee, additional fee. The small numbers appeared line by line, but added up enough to make the experience feel as heavy as a late summer electricity bill. A very common comparison started spreading in the comments. 2-3 nights at a 4-star hotel, approximately $350 with daily housekeeping. Meanwhile, Airbnb is equivalent to $650-700, not including the effort of arranging it yourself. At this point, the question is no longer whether it's cheap, but rather I'm paying extra to get less. For what reason? Customers can accept risk, but only if the low price compensates for that risk. When prices are on par with hotels, and the experience is uncertain, Airbnb is putting itself in a comparison where it has no chance of winning. Think about it. If you had to pay like a hotel, would you choose peace of mind or a gamble on an experience? And it was right here that the seeds of the boycott began to take root. Not loudly, not publicly, but enough to prepare for the emotional explosion in the next episode, when guests not only paid, but were also turned into workers during their own vacations. If you're starting to see the pieces fall into place, gently click the follow button, because the next part is where the collective outrage officially comes to light. In the previous section, we discussed how Airbnb has quietly become more expensive, and it's possible that this is still within the acceptable limits for customers. But now is when the real anger is about to explode. It's not because of a major update. It's not because of a single scandal, but because of a series of small, repetitive experiences that touch the customer's self-esteem. First is the cleaning fee. That sounds reasonable, since you can almost go on vacation anywhere. But then that number inexplicably escalated. $200, $300. In some places, it costs $600 for a short stay. The same price as renting a studio apartment for a whole week in many American cities. The problem isn't just about money. The problem is that after paying that fee, guests are still asked to wash the bedsheets, throw the trash on the side of the road, wash the dishes, wipe the kitchen, rearrange the house. This experience was quickly memed with a viral phrase, "I'm paying to clean someone else's house." From a consumer psychology perspective, this is an emotional breaking point. People are willing to pay for the service, but when they feel they're paying to work, the experience immediately turns into a role insult. It's not about $200 or $300, but because I'm a customer, not a late-night employee, the anger over the cleansing fee hasn't cooled down yet, and customers are now facing a series of explicit and implicit rules. Many customers have discovered that the law only appears after they have placed and paid for their order. The rulebook is longer than the menu of a Michelin-starred restaurant, from shower time and air conditioning temperature to how to place the bath towels. In the modern consumer world, law is synonymous with a trap. No matter how reasonable the content, the lack of transparency from the beginning immediately erodes trust. Customers are starting to feel controlled, being taught. Being put in the wrong position is your fault. For customers, transparency is more important than convenience. A beautiful house cannot compensate for the feeling of being psychologically trapped. And finally, all these pieces lead to a cold conclusion that thousands of comments repeat with the same phrasing. Every Airbnb stay is a gamble. The experience depends entirely on the host. Some are wonderful, Some people disappear when there's trouble. Some places are like the advertising photos. There are other places completely the opposite. No standard, no brand guarantee, no support when there are problems. And when the price is on par with a hotel, this uncertainty is no longer excusable. What about you? If you had to pay the same price, would you choose predictable peace of mind or an experiential gamble? Airbnb is gradually losing not only customers, but also the right to be understood. And when that happens, it only takes one more factor to push everything over the point of no return. In the next part, we'll touch on the most critical blow, safety and privacy, where just a small fear is enough to make millions turn away forever. If you want to continue the journey of peeling back each layer of truth, stay with the channel. The second part is when the story truly becomes spine-chilling. Among the thousands of comments about Airbnb, there's a group of stories that make readers pause longer than usual. It's not about the money, but because I felt something was off. Cases that are repeatedly shared. Cameras were detected in places they shouldn't be. The landlord entered the apartment without permission, claiming they were doing a quick check. The physical key is reused over many years, without changing the code. Risky incident due to poor maintenance. Protruding nails on the floor. Damaged steps. Forcing guests to stitch up wounds. Each story, considered individually, might just be a rare incident. But when hundreds of identical pieces appear, they form a disturbing picture. In business, there's a cold, hard rule. If there's just a 1% risk related to personal safety, consumers will immediately switch to the absolutely safest option. And that's when the hotel wins without having to compare prices. Business owners understand perfectly well that customers can accept imperfect experiences, but they don't accept the feeling of maybe being unsafe. Airbnb, at its core, is about being in the private space of strangers. When everything is good, it feels like home. But with just a small doubt, that experience immediately reversed, turning into a very instinctive question. Am I really safe here? Hotels are different. It's not because they're perfect, but because they standardize risk. Cameras in public areas, not private spaces. Staff, security, and reception available 24/7. Clear incident handling process. Is it possible that Airbnb is failing where technology cannot fix the belief in personal safety? You can add features, you can change the appearance, but you can't update a sense of security with just a software patch. I'd like to ask you, if you had to choose between a place that might be cheaper and a place that's definitely safer, which one would you choose? Many users didn't just stop booking Airbnbs. They decided not to return at all, and that paves the way for the sequel, the unexpected return of the hotel, not as an outdated relic, but as a safe haven in an increasingly uncertain world. The following section will show who took advantage of the gap left by Airbnb and how they did so. Something interesting happened while Airbnb was scrambling to fix the bug. The hotel, a model once considered outdated, rigid, and lacking personality, doesn't shout, doesn't need loud promotion. They just stood still, waiting for the user to come back on their own. It's not because the hotel is cheaper, and because in a world full of uncertainty, peace of mind becomes the most valuable luxury. The hotel hasn't changed much in the past 100 years, but it was precisely that lack of change that became a fatal advantage. At the hotel, you don't clean. The room is cleaned every day. There's a problem, someone will handle it right away. No need to text, wait for a reply, or figure things out on your own. And especially, breakfast. It sounds simple, but for a family of 3-4 people, breakfast out could cost $40, $70 per day, the equivalent of gas money for the entire short trip. The hotel sends a very clear message. Start your day without thinking. Meanwhile, On Airbnb, you have to do your own grocery shopping, cooking, wash the dishes, clean up. Hotels don't sell rooms. They sell the feeling of being cared for. And when people are tired of having to take care of everything in their daily lives, that feeling becomes invaluable. Think about it. Are vacations for resting or for continuing to do the things you already do at home? But the hotel's real counterattack didn't lie in the bed or the breakfast. It's located in the ecosystem. Every night at the hotel, earn points, free night exchange, room upgrade, get dining discounts, connect with airline miles, credit cards, and airport lounges. Everything works like a reverse magnet. The more you're there, the harder it is to leave. Meanwhile, Airbnb has almost nothing to hold on to. No bonus points, no long-term offers. There's no emotional reason to go back, beside the cheap price, something they've lost. Once users are accustomed to the hotel ecosystem, Airbnb no longer has a place on the list of options. And it's right here that the biggest paradox emerges. Airbnb, the very company that defeated hotels, inadvertently taught hotels how to win back. At the end, we'll answer the biggest question. Is this the end for Airbnb, or just the price to pay when a revolution forgets the human at its center? If previous episodes showed Airbnb losing customers due to experience, in episode 6, the story goes much further. This is no longer about comparing prices or amenities. This is when Airbnb is put on trial in the court of public opinion. In many American cities, Airbnb is no longer seen as a travel platform. It is seen as a drag that distorts the housing market. When an apartment can generate higher profits through short-term rentals, it disappears from the long-term rental market. And when thousands of apartments disappeared simultaneously, the consequences were almost immediate. Rents increased. Supply for locals is decreasing. People who work in the city itself can no longer afford to live there. In some major tourist areas, dozens of percent of housing units have been converted to short-term rentals, making residential areas gradually resemble an uninhabited tourist park, crowded during the day, with lights out en masse at night. A familiar image began to appear in the comments of many people. My city is no longer for the people. Boycotting Airbnb is no longer a consumer behavior. It has become an ethical statement. Staying at an Airbnb isn't just about saving money. And to say, I don't want to contribute to worsening this problem. Among thousands of comments, a group of keywords appeared so densely that it couldn't be considered random. Greed. Corporate greed. They deserve it. This is the most dangerous time for any brand, because when a company is labeled as greedy, they lose the right to be wrong. A small mistake is no longer a problem. It becomes evidence. A fee is no longer an operating expense. It became exhausted. In consumer psychology, this is the moment of moral anger. Users are not just annoyed. They feel their values have been betrayed. Airbnb was once loved for its sharing story, but when that story is replaced with maximizing profits, positive emotions reverse very quickly. What do you think? If a product is still convenient and popular, but you believe it's harming the community, would you continue to use it? And when a tech empire faces its toughest question, whether they can come back, or if this is the price to pay for forgetting the human at the center. Airbnb didn't collapse because of outdated technology. It's not simply because of the high price. Airbnb failed because it forgot one core thing. Customers aren't looking for features. They're looking for a sense of respect, security, and service. When a platform makes users feel exploited instead of welcomed, anxious instead of relaxed, and forced to work even on their vacations, it's no surprise that they quietly turn away. The biggest question isn't just for Airbnb, but for all tech platforms. Is a revolution still a revolution if it loses the human element at its core? Now it's your turn. Do you still believe Airbnb can make a comeback? So, is this a closed cycle? When traveling, do you prioritize convenience or peace of mind? Please share your perspective in the comments section, as your experience is the most important piece of this story. If you love in-depth analyses, dissecting user behavior, and the dark side of seemingly perfect business models, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next reports. The video content is based on publicly available data, market analysis, and widely shared user experiences. The video is analytical and educational and is not intended to attack any individual or organization. Viewers should consider additional sources of information before making financial or travel decisions. Thank you for watching until the end and see you in the next videos.